Hello there, and welcome to the Great Comeback with Holly McClain. I am your host, Holly McClain, and we are on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the #1 talk network out there. So welcome. I'm excited to have you here with me today. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I'm a counselor and a life coach, and I've been in this field for over a decade. My specialty is the comeback, the rebuild of careers, lives, post-divorce, big breakups, and nothing lights me up more than a great comeback. So in this show, we will talk about strategies and mindset techniques that are proven to support a successful life rebuild. You will become more clear, confident, and trust in yourself as you move forward, which is such an important piece of the puzzle as we're rebuilding and moving on to our next chapter. On this show, you will hear from incredible souls who have come back from some of life's most challenging situations. And you will also learn from experts in a variety of fields who will be sharing such fresh, regenerative ways for us to live our best lives as we move forward and move into that next chapter. So for today, on the flagship episode, I will be here with you, and we will be talking all things rebuild, comeback, starting again, and I will lay out the framework for you for a successful comeback. So this show is for you if you are wanting to rebuild, if you're heading into your next chapter, or if you've just arrived and you're dipping your toe in the water and you're contemplating that next shift. So what I like to start with first is, what is a comeback? So I actually went to the internet and I went online and I did a little bit of research, and I thought, okay, what type of definitions for a comeback are out there? Because sometimes we have an idea of what that means in our mind. So I just wanted to get some clarity here. So when I looked it up, I came back with 3 definitions. They weren't my favorite, so of course I created my own. So one definition that came back was a return, which makes sense. The second one was a success after a failure. I don't know about the word failure. And then the third definition was to overcome a downturn as a comeback. So here's my definition, and this is based upon my work with clients and having gone through a couple of pretty big rebuilds and comebacks myself. I think of a comeback as a coming back to your true self. And the more life experience that we have and the more things that we go through, for better or worse, the more we tap into who we truly are and discover and uncover what we love, what we want to leave behind. And that all becomes part of you as you're crafting this comeback and your next best chapter. So maybe what I'll do first, I'll share a little bit with you about 2 of my rebuilds that actually resulted in a comeback. So my biggest rebuild, which is my more recent rebuild, was coming back from a divorce in my early 40s. So this particular comeback really initially knocked me to the ground. It was a big, devastating point in my life for me, which launched me. My comeback was, driving me back into single life and finally launching my career as an entrepreneur. So my rock bottom in this transition was really that feeling of, I don't know what to do next. Everything is so confusing. I don't have any clarity. I mean, just the unknown. So if you've gone through a massive breakup or a divorce where you've actually planned your future and your years and your decades out with another person, it can be incredibly jolting. So when in that spot, I had to ask myself, okay, what's next? How do I work through this? And how do I ensure that I can make everything okay when things are so unknown for such an extended period of time as I'm navigating this? I literally could not function. It was hard to get out of bed in the morning. This was a really big setback for me that evolved and turned into a comeback. So slowly but surely, I, of course, leaned on the coaching community, my friends, my family, and worked my way through this particular comeback. Took some time, but it was definitely something that I was able to glean a lot of experience from. I was able to tap into some pieces of me that I didn't even know existed. I pulled up a few things from my past that I had let go when I was moving forward and married and in partnership with someone else. And I pulled those things back and I pulled in some new pieces of the puzzle. And I will share all of these details as we go. But that was my biggest, most recent comeback. And then I also had a comeback, which I consider my first really big setback and rebuild in my life. It happened in my early 20s. I was 24 years old and I had gone off to law school. And so this was post going to college. And I had this big idea that I wanted to become a lawyer. And I just wanted to become a lawyer because that sounded like something that I wanted to do. So I forged ahead. I got into law school. I went to law school. I had a horrendous year. It was one of the most challenging academic years I'd ever had. And you've probably heard that before. Law school is no joke. So I had my law school experience. And at the same time, I was also battling these feelings inside, like, this is not quite right for me. Something isn't feeling right. But at my ripe old age of 24, I felt like I needed to bulldog ahead and keep going and not listen to my internal wisdom or the whispers of the universe or that gut feeling that was telling me something's not right. And there are 2 more years ahead of me. And I don't know if this is going to play out for me very well. So I struggled, took the final exam at the end of the school year, went home for summer break, and it was about a month in, we got letters in the mail about upcoming information for the following second year of law school. And sure enough, I got a letter that said, you are not invited back. Your grades are not high enough. You did not perform well on your final. Complete devastation. And looking back, I mean, I'm only 24 years old. I have my whole life ahead of me and all these options and different directions and pathways I can go. The shame of being essentially what I called at the time kicked out of law school was completely overwhelming. I couldn't talk about it for a good 15 years. And at that point, I thought, what in the world am I going to do with my life? I was at rock bottom. I couldn't see very far in front of me at all. I call that part of the program being in the rocks. I was literally in the rocks. So that was my first experience at a huge setback. And back then, I wasn't familiar with coaching. That was back in 1998, 1999. So at that point, it was just a matter of asking friends, what should I do? I'm laying on my parents' couch, not sure what direction to go. And I ended up just putting one foot in front of the other until I kind of fumbled and found my way into high tech and then education and found my path here. And that's part of a comeback too, when you think about it. We don't want to spend too much time lying dormant. It is important to put one foot in front of the other and start exploring. So that will be part of the formula when I outline the foundation to putting your comeback together. So 2 pretty big comebacks for me. When I think about these life experiences or transitions, there are a variety of transitions in life that we go through. Some are more tumultuous than others. Some catch us by surprise, like law school and the divorce. Though in hindsight, when we look back, I really shouldn't have been surprised because there was something going on inside me, a gut feeling, my intuition that was telling me something wasn't quite right. And of course, we want to listen to those whispers too. But when it comes to those types of experiences, like I was saying, whether they're unplanned or they're planned, sometimes marriage, of course, is considered a life transition. That can be a little bit of a rocky road as you're adjusting. Also, when you're graduating and getting into the workforce, etc., motherhood, there are lots of transitions that we face in life. But I like to compare a transition, especially a rocky one that includes a comeback and sort of a reinvention of yourself. I like to consider those types of scenarios in life to the Japanese art of Kintsugi. So if you have not heard of this before, it is an art in Japan. I hope I'm pronouncing this properly. It's called Kintsugi, where you put broken pieces of pottery back together again and infuse those pieces with gold. So it's a little bit different than a mosaic where you're taking a bunch of different broken pieces and creating something brand new. You're actually taking a pot or a bowl that has broken apart, you're putting it back together into its original form, but you're using liquid gold. So you're using gold to fuse together those pieces. And the value in this particular piece of art is in the repair. The value and the beauty is in what is holding it all together. And so when I learned about this work of art in Japan, I thought this is very similar to a rebuild. When we find ourselves in these places where maybe we are falling apart or we've fallen apart and we need to put our pieces back together again. It doesn't have to be this big, disruptive, traumatic experience. It could simply be a career shift, which in itself is not simple, but can be complicated and overwhelming, but similar to like a career shift where you know your soul knows it might be time to move forward and branch out, but you're safe and sound in a certain position. And so you have to almost break apart or fall apart in order to come back together again with all of that additional knowledge and wealth and growth and all of those beautiful things that go along with it. So basically, that's where I made the connection between Kintsugi and the rebuild and the comeback. So another way that I'd like to share and explain this whole comeback concept to you, especially if you're going through it now, is through a little analogy. And I call this the life cycle of the comeback. And I like to connect it to the transformation of the caterpillar into the butterfly, because there's a lot that's happening there. And there are some incredible pieces that we want to take note of in that transformation that really relate to us as we are rebuilding and creating that next chapter for ourselves and coming back. So the life cycle of a comeback. It starts as if it were a caterpillar, that little worm covered in fur, inching along, minding its own business. And then all of a sudden something happens, similar to a life shift or a transition. That could be something happening to you, or that could be something that just happens within you and inside you, and you know you have to make a change and a shift. And then all of a sudden the spin begins. What is actually happening? And you're spinning this cocoon or this web type of place for you to figure it out, sort it out. There's confusion, especially with the caterpillar inside of the cocoon. It's slimy. The little critter actually happens to be breaking down and turning into a gel, a gelatinous type of situation in there. It's weird, it's dark, it could be stinky, I imagine. All the things are happening. And that's really the messy in the middle. When we start a process like this, and then we dive in, and all of a sudden we're cocooned, and it gets very dark and messy in the middle. You're dealing with all of these things, but what's actually happening is a transformation. So something is happening deep inside you on a deeper level as you're going through this. So you're spinning and you're circling, and then all of a sudden you start your budding and springing up wings in there. And maybe you're getting ready to come out, because that sticky spot can take a while, and sometimes it can feel like it's forever. And you don't know when the end of that piece is and when the next portion is going to begin. So here's the tricky piece with that. Oftentimes when people are in that cocoon, that's when they seek out coaching or therapy and support. And as your coach, I can help you dive in, analyze where you're at, take a look at where you're going, and all those wonderful things. But the one thing that I cannot do is I cannot crack open the chrysalis, which is that exterior of the cocoon. I can't crack that open and let you out so that you can spread your wings. If you do that to a caterpillar that's forming into a butterfly, it will die. So basically, you have to chip your way out from the inside, meaning in a transition like this, you're going deeper and deeper inside of yourself to figure out what's next and what's going on for you. So as you get to that point where you are the budding butterfly and you're breaking yourself through the chrysalis and you're coming out, you're able to spread your wings. You're able to see that next chapter for yourself. So you're cracking through, you're working through, and then there you are. So that's my little explanation of the comeback, explaining that in connection with the life cycle of our butterfly. So when we come back, I want to dive a little bit more deeply into the foundation of your comeback. So we do have to take a very short break. Stay with me and we will be right back. We are back. So quick recap. We just discussed the definition of a comeback with a little analogy. And now let's dive into the foundation of your comeback. And this is a really important piece. It's simple. It's not rocket science, but it's really important to understand how to create your foundation. So whether you're at the early stages or you're contemplating your next rebuild, this is an important piece of the puzzle. So the foundation of your comeback is actually 3 parts. One of those pieces is those pieces of you that you are going to take moving forward in your next chapter. So you really want to take a look at what are the pieces of me that I love that I'm taking forward with me in my journey? What aspects of your personality or pieces of you do you want to carry forward? Your strengths and those things that you love. The second part is, what do I want to leave behind? There are some things that we may need to shed from the place that we are and where we're coming from. So, for example, when I made a big career shift and I left working for an institution to working for myself, there were aspects of my personality and how I did business and how I function that I wanted to leave behind so that my next chapter into entrepreneurship had other parts of me, because I would soon be wearing many different hats than before. And then the third part is, what additional new pieces do I want to take with me? And this is where it gets really fun, because you get to dream and explore and be curious about some of those things that you haven't even yet uncovered. So you're keeping your eyes and ears open for new and interesting ideas. And this is where it gets exciting too with this show, because I'm bringing on guests who are experts in different fields and different areas. So some of the things that we'll dive into, just a little sneak peek, we'll be diving into manifesting. What is that all about? Essential oils, digging into parts of yourself a little more deeply and exploring other types of areas where you can enhance your life and grow yourself as you move forward on your journey in a healthy and rejuvenating way. So 3 parts. What are you taking with you? What are you leaving behind? And what are you curious about that you want to add into this fresh new part of you in this fresh new chapter that you are embarking on? So a little inventory tool for you that you can do on your own is make a list of those 3 pieces, a brainstorm just to get your mind thinking. And if you're already on this rebuild and you're already into your comeback, do a little check-in with yourself and remind yourself, okay, what have I decided to take with me? What am I taking with me? What have I decided to shed and leave behind that's no longer serving me? And then finally, what do I want to add? What am I curious about? Is there something I want to pick up that maybe I set down years ago when I shifted into my previous chapter? So once you've laid this foundation, what's really nice at this point is to take a deeper look at, why this next move? Why this next chapter? Why am I embarking on this new journey? And that why was a piece of the puzzle for me when I had my law school experience and I dove into the chapter of law school that didn't quite work out for me. I never really looked at why I was getting into law. I didn't have a deep reason. So it can really help to ground you in establishing that next chapter if you dig in and ask yourself, why this? And why now? Great journal prompt for you there. And also too, as you're moving forward in your journey, make sure that you're taking little tiny incremental turtle steps. This piece of your journey is more of a marathon, because you are in it making shifts for the long haul as you're transitioning. Take those tiny turtle steps slowly and make sure you celebrate as you accomplish those pieces moving forward. And the third piece that I wanted to address today in regard to your comeback is a big question that I get often from clients. And that question is, how do I do this right? I want a successful comeback. I don't want to be held back. I don't want to be stuck here with this baggage or spinning in circles. And I surely don't want to take some steps forward into the next chapter, freak out, and then take some steps back. So how do I create a successful comeback? And the coach in me says your first step to creating a successful comeback is you must ask yourself, what does a successful comeback look like for me? And that could look very different for you than for someone else who's going through a similar rebuild. That successful comeback today, for you, that might look like not crying every day or getting through an entire weekend without worrying or spinning. Or you may be ready to draft out and paint the picture of that complete next chapter of your life. And if you have that insight within you, that's exactly what you want to do. This is a huge piece to laying your foundation. Jot it down on paper. You can even take your visions and your ideas and create a full vision board. You can sketch it out, draw it out if you're more artistic and visual. Writing it down in detail is critical. And if and only you are ready to really plant those seeds deeply in the soil, look at what you've created and drafted as your next best chapter and really embody it, meaning feel what it would feel like to be in that place and time. What is it like when you finally get to that point and you feel like you've really got both feet into that next chapter for you? And that is how you set the groundwork for a healthy, successful comeback. So let's do a quick recap of what we covered today. We looked at the definition of the comeback. So now you have a definition and you have my definition, and you're welcome to piece and pull those together to create that for you and make meaning for you and your journey as you move forward. We also talked about how to create the foundation. How do you lay the foundation for your comeback? 3 parts, which I invite you to journal about. What are you taking with you in this next chapter? Those parts of you that you love that are going to serve you moving forward. What are you leaving behind? What do you need to shed? And then finally, what additional things will you be adding to the mix? And those additional pieces, half of them you haven't even uncovered yet. You will be exposed to new things if you are open, and you can explore and dive into those things that also are curiosities that spike your interest. And then finally, we explored what makes a successful comeback. And that successful comeback is really you deciding what that looks like and painting a detailed picture to serve you as your guiding light. When I work with clients, it's interesting because when they come to me and they're ready to create their next chapter, we sit down and we dive into what could that look like. And for them, a particular client that comes to mind, her comeback looked like unwinding all of the knots. So we got very, very specific in terms of what that looked like. So your comeback is going to be as unique as your fingerprint. I want to thank you all for joining me today for this flagship episode of The Great Comeback. Excuse me. This episode was actually sponsored by the 6-week comeback, which is 6 weeks of one-on-one coaching with me, where I coach you to a place of clarity, confidence, and belief in yourself as you create that next best chapter of your life. And you can visit me at hollymcclaincoaching.com for more details. So again, thank you very much for joining me. Next time we will have a very special guest, so I'm excited to introduce you to her. And thank you to my amazing producer, Cece, who works her magic on the back end to make this show possible and amazing. Have a great rest of your week and be well.